Welcome, everybody, to today's Concordia Live, the first Concordia Live of 2022. We're excited to kick off January with this conversation and with this slightly revamped version of how we'll be approaching these 45 to 60-minute conversations each month. So each month, our goal at Concordia is to host a Concordia Live on a topic that connects back with a global conversation and highlights the innovative partnership working within the Concordia community. And I couldn't be happier about today's topic and our longtime global patron member, Winrock International, who's hosting today's conversation. So today's topic takes the new year energy and the traditional resolution to sort out our finances and brings experts together to discuss unique programs designed to help small and medium enterprises directly to better ensure an equitable, inclusive economic recovery. This focus on financial inclusion and economic development is also a theme of much of Concordia's upcoming programming throughout the year, to include our upcoming Concordia Lexington event and other major events throughout. So I'm thrilled that we're starting with this series. And if you're into this conversation, which you should be because you're tuning in, you should definitely see how we'll be approaching the topic throughout other conversation sets. Okay. Some quick helpful housekeeping tips for those unfamiliar with Concordia Live and the Zoom platform that we utilize to make the most out of your next 45 minutes. First, we want this to be interactive. There is an opportunity to ask questions, to provide feedback or thoughts. By all means, use that chat feature. Questions will be sent directly to Julie, our moderator, and she'll be able to integrate them throughout the conversation. So send them at will, and we'll make sure that we're touching on those key points in today's conversation so that you're getting the most out of it. There is a recording function on this, so all of this will be captured. We encourage you to share this post-event, and if there's folks in your network who might find the content really valuable, make sure they can access it as well. And then finally, share this over your social media too. You can use hashtag Concordia22 or at Concordia Summit, or tag any of our amazing speakers and their affiliates in the conversation. And really, let's keep this conversation going, but get it out there as much as possible. So it's now my pleasure to introduce both Julie Hyman, today's moderator and esteemed anchor at Yahoo Finance, as well as Rodney Ferguson, senior advisor to Concordia, to help us frame and structure this conversation so that it moves forward with expertise and actionability. Rodney, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hannah, and thank you to all of your colleagues at Concordia for making this possible, and to our partners. I am Rodney Ferguson. I'm the president and CEO of Winrock International. And I'd like to thank you for joining us today for this Concordia Live session, a fresh start for America's financial independence. Winrock is proud to be a patron member of Concordia, and I'm honored to serve as one of Concordia's senior advisors. Our partnership with Concordia affords us the opportunity to elevate the issues critical to our mission and allows us to engage with leaders in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors to collaborate on innovative solutions. The COVID-19 crisis has had a devastating impact on small business in the United States. I think everyone on this call recognizes that. That's why you've joined us to hear a little bit about at least a small set of solutions to help address that crisis. The pressure has been particularly intense for historically disenfranchised communities across the South and the Southeast of the United States. When we think about economic recovery, we must be mindful of the needs of all communities. Equitable and inclusive access to financial resources is critical. To address this need, Calverts Impact Capital partnered with investors, businesses, and community leaders to create the Southern Opportunity and Resilience Fund, otherwise known as SOAR. The SOAR Fund provides flexible, affordable capital and free business support services to small businesses across the South and Southeast. The loans are designed to reach the smallest of small businesses and those that have been historically under-resourced. Offering free business support services or technical assistance is a differentiator for the SOAR Fund. This is where Winrock, along with partners like the Visa Foundation, can play a role in ensuring that those businesses can leverage both access to capital and technical assistance to achieve long-term success. The Visa Foundation SOAR Technical Assistance Program serves business owners seeking to connect with SOAR fund lenders. Winrock's technical assistance services can meet each business where they are and guide them through the process to successfully secure a loan. That support can extend beyond the loan process to ensure the long-term viability of the business, which is, of course, the goal. Visa Foundation support allows us to provide the technical assistance at no extra cost to the business. The panel today will discuss the launch of the SOAR Fund and the impact it has had today. We'll also share how the Visa Foundation and Winrock are deploying technical assistance and how businesses are benefiting from those services. As the SOAR Fund expands its reach, Winrock will seek to engage with more partners to increase the number of businesses we can support through technical assistance. And again, thank you for joining us today. So I'd like to turn it over to our panel moderator, Julie Hyman. Julie is an anchor with Yahoo Finance Live. She hosts programming 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. weekdays. She covers up to the minute market moves, corporate earnings, and larger financial and economic trends. Needless to say, she's been very busy over the last week. She has interviewed newsmakers, members of Congress, CEOs, leaders from the ESG community, activists and influencers in the financial world. She's covered financial markets for 20 years, spending much of her career at Bloomberg Television, where we've had the pleasure to see her insightful coverage for a couple of decades. She has served a number of roles: senior markets correspondent, anchor, retail reporter, correspondent at the NYSE and NASDAQ. She joined Bloomberg as a reporter covering European stocks in the Paris bureau. That's what I hope my next job will be. Hyman began her career at the Washington Times. And she grew up outside Baltimore and attended Randolph-Macon College. So, Julie, welcome and thank you so much on behalf of Winrock and Visa and Calverts and Concordia for agreeing to host and moderate our discussion today. So I'll turn it over to you.
Rodney, it's my pleasure. A lot of Maryland connections here on the call today, so that's always fun. Thanks very much for all of that. I want to introduce our panelists too, and I'm going to just tell you their names and their organizations so we can get to the meat of the discussion. You all have already met Rodney Ferguson, President and CEO of Winrock International. Robert Meloche, who I know I'm going to get your name wrong, Robert, because with that French background, I want to say Meloche, as we talked about earlier. Perfect. He's head of programs at the Visa Foundation. Tonitrice Wicks is Senior Program Officer at Winrock International. And finally, Caroline Yarborough is Syndications and Strategy Officer at Calverts Impact Capital. So Rodney laid it out for us a little bit and told us about obviously what's at stake here and what the SOAR program is attempting to do, and then the technical assistance for that program. So what I'd like all of you to do is just in turn talk about how you got together on this and sort of the role that each of you is playing in this effort here. And Robert, why don't I start with you to talk about the funding piece of all of this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Well, how we got together is actually that with the great thing about SOAR is that this has been able to learn from a series of other funds that Calvert and others have helped to pioneer over the last year and a half, specifically the California Rebuilding Fund, which is a very similar structure to this one. And so we invested in that along with Calverts to support small businesses, just like we're doing here in the South. And so the SOAR Fund was launched, and Calvert brought together another group of funders to pull that together, and then bringing in lessons learned from those two previous funds, especially this support around technical assistance and helping borrowers through the process. It's not just enough to stand up a website and say, here's the loans are available. You have to help borrowers through that process to make sure they're matched, and then continuing through the repayment period. So that's how we came into it. And I think the important part, as far as who are the players, there's many other players not on this call that are supporting the SOAR Fund. And it really is what makes it distinct, I think, is the way that Calvert and Lisk and Winrock have come together to design something that's a whole package. So there's opportunities to come in at a senior level of funding. We're coming in at a Class B shares or subordinated debt. There's other individuals, other groups, I should say, providing first loss funding to the group, as well as technical assistance. And so this is a financial tool that really is a thoughtful construct really put together by the folks at Calvert and Lisk to address this problem holistically. So that's how we joined. First, a $5 million investment into the subordinated debt of the fund itself, and then the technical assistance support to Winrock to support these borrowers.
Caroline, you want to weigh in here on Calvert's role?
Yes, sure thing. And I think that Barbara did a really great job of explaining sort of that, just the enormity of the collaboration behind this. So Calvert, our role is we are a nonprofit impact investment intermediary that works to increase the flow of capital to underserved communities. So we've come together to really create a financial vehicle that investors, impact investors like Visa Foundation, like other corporations and banks, can channel their capital to go towards really small businesses across the South that have struggled over the last year and a half from the pandemic. So our role is really to bring together all of these impact investors and then work with the organizations on the ground. So like Winrock's technical assistance programs, like the community development lenders, to help them pull together programs that serve small businesses with low cost capital. So we really lean on those community partners that are really the first line in terms of providing economic recovery services to their communities. We really rely on those partners to provide support to small businesses.
Tonitrice, I want to go to you next because as Caroline talks about sort of on the ground partners, I think that means you. So what are you seeing? What are you seeing in the community in terms of the need for this, and what role are you all playing?
We are seeing a need in the community for our project, for technical assistance to help support businesses through the process of applying for funding and accessing capital through the SOAR fund. We are working to identify 150 small business owners from 7 states. The 7 states that we're working with are Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. What we're doing is we're going to provide workshops and trainings on some topics that we've identified as the highest need for the companies to help them successfully apply for the loans. It's personal credit counseling, business plan development, and accounting and finance are some of the topics that we've identified. We're also going to do one-on-one coaching, and we're working with entrepreneurial service organizations in the communities to provide this one-on-one coaching. And this really helps meet the businesses where they are. And then we're doing outreach and recruitment with ambassadors who are also in the community. So our goal is to really meet the businesses where they are, identify the needs, and provide technical assistance to support them so they can access the SOAR fund. And that's really our role in this partnership.
Rodney, I want to bring it back over to you because something that Robert said kind of piqued my interest, which is that you guys have all been sort of collaborating on various things. This is not the first. And you talked about lessons learned. And the idea of this technical assistance piece intrigues me because, from my perspective, I've seen more the government loan process throughout the pandemic. And it's a tricky process, right, for businesses to go through. So it's interesting that you all added this technical piece. And I'm curious, what sort of led to that and what other learnings have you come across in the run up to introducing this latest effort?
Well, that's a great question, Julie. Winrock International has been engaged in this type of technical assistance work for decades. A lot of it in Arkansas. Our historic headquarters are in Arkansas. And so we've developed an expertise in how to work with these small and in many cases micro businesses, and in many cases micro businesses started by historically disadvantaged populations. And some of the lessons we've learned is, for example, even how to apply for a loan, right? Even filling out a loan application oftentimes entails gathering information which a small micro business perhaps never has been asked to compile, right? So they're unfamiliar with the types of data gathering they need to do even to apply for a loan. They may have rudimentary or even no experience in anything remote like sophisticated accounting requirements. They may have no experience with marketing. If they have a small business that requires consumer-facing services, they may have very limited experience in how you reach those consumers, and then on and on. And the needs of the smallest and most disadvantaged of these businesses are quite distinct from medium-sized and certainly large businesses. And so and also the third thing is there's a lot of mistrust. A lot of times there's a lot of uncertainty, and having familiarity with the community, with those types of businesses, with those types of entrepreneurs goes a long way into building their trust. And let's face it, anytime you put your signature on any loan application, even people that are very experienced and done this many times, there's always that little bit of apprehension. Oh my God, I'm just signing over my life to a mortgage broker or a car dealer or a small business loan. It can be really anxiety producing. And what we hope to do is come in and help these small businesses realize there's no magic. You should have access to capital just like any other business anywhere else. Your needs are unique. We understand those needs, and we feel as though with just a little coaching and a little assistance, you can put yourself in the position to succeed and grow jobs and grow the local economy, improve your own livelihood of yourself and your family. And those are the lessons we've learned over decades of doing this work. And it's a huge need, not only in the states in which we're working, it's really a huge need all over the United States. And I hope that policymakers will listen as well. And along with nonprofit and foundation and impact investors like we have involved in this project, that this will become a more important national call to action, that these business people need assistance, need access to capital.
I think bound up in all of our conversations right now is where we are in the pandemic and what are the needs of the business community and how they changed during different phases of the pandemic. So Robert, to bring you back into this, how is Visa sort of viewing this stage? How sort of protracted this kind of financial assistance is going to be for small businesses, and how you adapt at different phases of this in terms of the funding opportunities that you're looking at?
Yeah, well, these inequities that Rodney spoke of existed far before the pandemic, and the pandemic has only served to expand them. So I think for us, the challenge is these gaps for women borrowers, for borrowers of color, have gotten worse. And we need to, I think the other lesson learned, like we need to provide more capital into this over an extended period of time. The other lesson learned is for the funders, and that it's not enough just to say, okay, well, we're going to make a pool of capital available and leave it at that. You mentioned the sort of government-run programs. We saw some of the challenges of those. If you're just trying to push more capital through the same sort of inefficient or inequitable system, you're not going to get better results. And so many of the controls put in place here that the businesses have to be 50 employees or less. There's caps on the loan sizes. They can't go to small businesses that are connected to sort of national franchises, things like that. So we're trying to pay attention to how do we, if we had this gap before, the gap has gotten worse, how do we push the money actually to these borrowers? And so that I think is one of the challenges. And yeah, some of the changes that we're seeing through the pandemic, especially around the need for a business to have digital access and a way to communicate to their customers digitally, is not going to go away. And we need to help train and equip businesses to do that part as well. So yeah, that's for us, at least we were already committed to this before the pandemic started on serving businesses of color, and it's only been increased. And we're encouraged by the number of funders putting dollars in. But we need to make sure that the other lesson that we're all willing to learn is one around risk. And one of the reasons that these borrowers have been shut out of the financial system is because of some of the structures around things like credit score that we become over-reliant on as a proxy for people's ability and willingness to repay. And if you've been shut out of the credit system historically, there's really sort of no way in. And so we've got to be willing to take more risk, put capital in that's quote unquote riskier to reach these borrowers, or in fact, they're not necessarily riskier, they just haven't been a part of the formal credit system. And so I think that's the other mindset shift we need is coming out of this pandemic.
And I'm not sure if Tonitrice mentioned it. The total funding in here is $150 million, and the maximum that organizations can apply for is $100,000 at a time. Just to frame it for folks. Caroline, when it comes to Calvert, I'll ask you a similar question to what I asked Robert, which is that how do you view the future of the fund? I mean, obviously, the fund is not used up yet. It's still available. People should still be applying for it. But how do you think about the evolution here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what Robert had just touched on is really important, that this work was sort of has been going on for decades, and we've seen that there are gaps in access to capital across different groups, right? We know that businesses that are led by women, that are led by people of color, they face higher barriers to accessing capital. And so I think the pandemic just really exacerbated some of those, how clear some of those gaps were. And so one thing that's really sort of a silver lining that has come out of these new partnerships is now there are really strong connections being formed between community partners like CDFIs, like Winrock, and small business communities that struggle to access these resources in times of crisis. So I think, when thinking about a little bit about the evolution of resources available to small businesses, we saw at the beginning of the pandemic, there were programs like PPP that were really grant-oriented programs that were filling revenue gaps for businesses that had lost months of revenue when their business had to shut down because of the pandemic. Now we're seeing, and I think the SOAR fund really targets this shift from immediate relief to long-term recovery. And we know that this recovery is going to last more than just this year. It's going to last into the next 5 and 10 years as small businesses rebuild. And so when we're setting up these programs, it's really for the long-term play of making sure that there are connections between small businesses that can't get access to banking services, that are excluded from our current traditional financial system, and nonprofit and mission-oriented partners like Winrock and the community development institutions.
Tonitrice, we're getting a question from the audience, actually, that I think is a good one to sort of turn to, and that's who's getting the assistance. Someone wants to know, what's the average profile of the businesses you're assisting in terms of size, location, other statistics. I don't know if there is sort of an average profile, if you will, but just give us an idea of who's applying for these loans, who's getting these loans, who are these folks out in the community?
So I don't have a profile for who's actually applying for the loan. I do have a profile of who has reached out to us. So many businesses that may have not applied for the SOAR fund and they didn't receive the funding for whatever reason have reached out to us about, hey, how can I improve my application or resubmit? What can I do to increase my chances of successfully applying for the loan? Also, other businesses that are just interested in applying for the loan. We target 150 small businesses, and the state we reach, we're working with our Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Oklahoma, and West Virginia. However, our fund reaches 15 states. And Caroline, I can't think of the 15 states. I try to keep the set we work with my brain. So Caroline, if you want to jump in and tell the 15 states that you all work with, please do so.
Sure thing. Yeah, and happy to share some stats on sort of who the SOAR fund has funded to date. So the SOAR fund is across 15 states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Delaware, DC, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Maryland, North and South Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Texas, Virginia, and West Virginia. So it's really a really pretty comprehensive region when looking at the Southeast and the Southwest. To date, Julie, just to touch on a little bit, who are the businesses that are getting access to this capital? So it's really small businesses. It's businesses, when you walk down Main Street that you see. So we've had florists, local family restaurants get access to SOAR fund loans. When just looking at the stats, so almost 90% of SOAR fund loans have gone to businesses with 10 or fewer full-time employees. Over 90% have gone to businesses with less than $1 million in revenue, and almost 80% have gone to women-owned and BIPOC-owned businesses. So in terms of who the program is reaching, it's exactly who it was set out to serve. And we've been just really thrilled by all the work that the CDFIs have done so far to make sure that the businesses that don't have access to other forms of capital are able to access SOAR Fund.
Caroline, there's a really good follow-up question for you that just came in from the audience, which is, how does Calvert measure the impact of the investment? That's always a tricky thing to do, I know. Is it the number of loans or the amount of money that is deployed, repayment on the loans? How do you guys figure that out?
Yeah, so it's all of that. I would say we have a really unique opportunity with the SOAR Fund to sort of see who's getting access to the loans. So part of it is in this initial phase, who are the loans going to? And so we look at the race, we look at the business size, we look at what community they're in. So are they in a low-income community? Are they in a rural community? And so we look at sort of all those metrics that are pretty easily quantifiable. And then we're also going to be looking at a more qualitative assessment. So we're going to be doing interviews of recipients of SOAR Fund loans and really digging deeper to find out, did you have access to other forms of capital? What did the SOAR Fund help you achieve with your business? And then looking, 5 or 6 years from now, we'll certainly look at the performance of the loans and compare those to what bank loans looked like during this time. And we saw during the last recession that CDFI loans performed in line with bank lenders. So in terms of people, just blanket saying that these loans are more risky, I think we have a little bit. We have data to show that the way in which CDFIs work with their business borrowers makes that a little more nuanced than might meet the eye.
Rodney, when we talk about sort of helping disadvantaged communities or businesses in disadvantaged communities, how do you specifically, support those folks, impact those folks, and talking about minority-owned businesses specifically as well?
Well, as Carolyn said, the range of things that a small business needs is broad. The goal, as Carolyn also said, is to make sure that this business can succeed, and ultimately so that the loan can be repaid. These are loans, they're not grants. The expectation is that it will be built into an organization's primarily working capital to be able to improve its services or its offer to its customers and repay the loan. And so for like any business, that ranges across all of the operational verticals in even a small business. Accounting services, they need to know how to manage perhaps a slightly more complex set of books. They need to know how perhaps to work with outside accountants. They need to know how when to file taxes. And this all may sound very patronizing, but for any of us who have been around these very small businesses, you don't get into a business if you're a small business person thinking, well, I really want to do this so I can be better at accounting. I want to do this so I can do the thing that I love to do and do it well and build a business and bring on employees and help my family and help my community and all those other reasons why people get into business, not to master the various elements that are required to be successful. That's, I think, the undergirding that Winrock, we see our role is to come in and say, here are the girders which are going to support your business. This is how you solidify those and do those well. This is how you grow your business. This is how you deal with state, local, state, or federal officials that you have to deal with. If you have an SBA loan, or if you have a local assistance loan, whatever the case may be. So there's this myriad of things that people have to do in order to have a successful small business. We never know. There's no formula. You go in but you have to look and assess that business independently. But the goal ultimately is create a successful infrastructure for this small business to operate and succeed, so that they can pay off this loan, graduate to the next level of financing, and ultimately someday they're going to be negotiating with Jamie Dimon at JP Morgan to finance their M&A, their multi-billion-dollar M&A. That's sort of the end game. But let's start where we start, which are some very, very fundamental and important elements of small, successful businesses.
I like that angle, Rodney. Tonitrice, I want to come back to you for a second, but you talked about the applications for assistance that you guys get. I'm curious about a couple of things. First of all, how you're letting people know that assistance is available. And secondly, we also had another viewer question about whether any of the business owners are skeptical of the assistance that you're providing. I mean, I'm sure some of these folks have not had great experiences 100% of the time with the financial system, if you will. And so I'm curious about, and this viewer was curious about that aspect also.
Well, one of the interesting things about this is many companies, small businesses, and under-resourced businesses feel as if they've missed the boat because the PPP loans have ended. The SBA loans for COVID loans have also ended in December. However, the SOAR fund gives a more long-term recovery opportunity for these businesses. And what we're doing is we're doing outreach. So through social media, through our networks, we have our ambassadors program. We're not sitting at our headquarters in Little Rock trying to reach these communities. We actually have boots on the ground. We have partnered with entrepreneurial service organizations that are in the community, and they work with these businesses on a day-to-day basis to help spread the word. And we also have ambassadors whose goal is the outreach and the recruitment. They are working with the businesses in small towns. I'm from a small town, and you know everyone. You go to church with them, you go to school with them. So they are our boots on the ground. They are our mouthpiece to help spread the word about the SOAR Fund and the support that we are able to give them at Winrock. Are companies skeptical? Yes. I am. I used to be a business owner, and I was a business owner during COVID before I assumed this role, and I was skeptical myself. And so I can relate to the many companies reach out to us who wouldn't be skeptical of this process, because you turn on the news and you see people who are getting arrested for PPP or doing wrong when they're applying for these funds. So our role through one-on-one counseling, through the trainings, through our outreach and partnership with the communities in the target areas is to educate people and have them understand the process and what we're doing. And we're here to answer any questions. And sometimes when you're supporting these businesses, it is just we understand it's scary, but this is what we're doing is the right way. It's the legal way. And this is how you should do it. And this is the process. And we're going to set you up where your business account is separate from your personal account. So it doesn't even appear that there is commingling of funding. And some businesses don't know. So what we're doing is we're supporting businesses through those fears. And we're here to hear any fear that you have. I have actually talked to a business owner that said, I'm afraid because I'm watching the news. And I think it was very liberating for him to hear that as a business owner, I was afraid too. And so that one-on-one counseling where I'm reassuring him, I think really helped him to see, well, let me look into this a little bit more. Let me apply, find out more. And so our programs help that. Our technical assistant and our support and our resources help that. And then we have other successful businesses that have applied for the fund, received it, and we can connect them with each other. There's a network of support here to help them throughout this process. So that's how we do it here at Winrock. Thank you.
I think that really, there's another viewer question that came in, but I think a lot of what you just said goes to address it, which is this person says trust is huge within communities of color. And they want to know if you have any suggestions on how this fund and others that don't necessarily look like the funders can create more diversity at the level that you lead within the fund. And I think you talked a little about this, which is that you have people in the communities who have gone through the same experiences who are leading this outreach. Would you have any other suggestions as well?
I know for us, diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. At Winrock, is important at US programs where the SOAR Fund project is located. And it's not a conversation that just occurs when we receive funding. It is something that happened before I started working here, since I started working here, and then after we received the SOAR funding. Diversity, equity, inclusion is integrated in how we plan our programs and how we intentionally think about recruitment. So the conversation of we need to work in the communities, we need to have recruiters and ambassadors that look like our community and also are in the community. We need organizations that work with the community. So one of the requirements for the organizations that we are partnering with is, what is your background and experience working with the underserved community, with minority communities? And the companies who applied had to describe what they're currently doing. So we intentionally are working with companies that have trust in the community. We are intentionally and aware that there is mistrust there. So we incorporate it in everything. We have very candid conversations in our meetings about the gaps and the disparities and the mistrust. And our team that I work with, we are diverse. So I'm not the only Black minority former business owner in our company, in our division that's working with other business owners. We've done this before. I know we're talking about SOAR, but we have several programs where we work with minority business owners that were prior to SOAR. So when it came to recruitment, all we had to do was reach out to the companies we work with, who we have trust with, who trust us, who we've established a great relationship. And so we said, hey, do you know of any other businesses? So they go to the community, the people that they trust and other businesses they trust. And it helps us create a network or a community of people who, yeah, I trust iFund because they help this group. I trust SOAR because they help this group. Oh, they're all related. They're all Winrock companies. So Winrock is a good company because they care about diversity and equity and inclusion. And then they talk to me, who our company puts diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront, and then our unit does it as well. And we just create a space where it's diversity, inclusion, equity, inclusion is talked about and it's supported, and we think about it through the planning and implementation phases of our program. So we have a reputation in the community that I can actually say people trust us because of what we've done. And then I think we're just leveraging that experience of what we've done in the past and what we're currently doing to continue with the SOAR Fund to provide this technical assistance for businesses.
Right. That zoom in is really helpful to talk about sort of granularly what you guys are doing. Robert, I think you probably have the best opportunity to sort of zoom out here in terms of scope of organization. What are some of the other similar projects that you guys have funded, are funding, and what's the sort of feedback loop of lessons that you're learning from them that you can then provide to initiatives like this, but also can take back to some of the others?
Yeah, I mean, it's to really look at the entire ecosystem for entrepreneurs of color. So, for example, are we cultivating that and developing it at HBCUs? And so one of the things that we're looking at is greater support in those communities. We're doing some now, but we are also a part of what's called Black Ambition we funded, which is a national prize contest for HBCU graduates and alumni that can apply for for funding for their startup businesses. And these are more of sort of in the venture capital kind of scale businesses you would be thinking about coming out of an HBCU, as opposed to maybe some of the local, on the ground businesses there. We're also taking a look at, a big part of Rodney was talking about walking into Jamie Dimon's door and negotiating a deal. Part of the challenge for once businesses get to that scale within the venture capital space, the asset allocators, to your previous question, don't look like these entrepreneurs either. I think it's less than 1-2% of assets that are managed by women or people of color. And so we're also doing grant funding to diversify the fund manager base. So we're working with a group called VC Include, which is trying to drive more BIPOC fund managers and help them stand up funds so that they can then make investments into these businesses. And again, these would be businesses that are investment ready and from a venture capital sort of standpoint. And so that group is nationwide in the US, and they just graduated their first cohort of BIPOC first-time fund managers. And so we try to think about, where along this whole capital continuum, from the allocators to the sort of potential entrepreneurs, these on-the-ground businesses, kind of at the Main Street level, how can we put dollars and resources and build coalitions around each of those?
A couple of people have asked how to become a community ambassador for this, for SOAR. And I actually don't know who would be the best person to answer that. Do you guys want to raise your hand? Tell me who might know how to do that. Go for it,
I would probably, I can just get this to the other folks, but one way to be a community ambassador to this is to, you can, by the way, it's mentioned a few times, but these CDFIs, they are really the key to how these loans are being delivered. These longstanding, they've got the trust as well, as Tonitrice was talking about. You can directly donate to those CDFIs. A number of them are nonprofit charitable organizations in these various states. You can donate to them. Some of them also you can bank with them. You could set up a deposit account, and that's the kind of money that then is loaned out. And I guess the last one I'd say is take a look at the financial institutions that are investing in SOAR, and consider supporting them with your dollars. So you can somewhat give directly by banking with those institutions that are doing that kind of lending. And if your current bank is not on that list, maybe you could ask them, why are you not taking some of my assets I have sitting in your institution and putting into things like that? So, and then of course, credit unions are another form of the CDFI, many community development credit unions, and you can, in each of these states, there will be credit unions that you could join, and again, make a deposit, and that's the kind of money that we lend out to these borrowers of color. And so if you're looking for a list of those, you can go to inclusive.org and see a list of community development credit unions, which again are the CDFI version in the credit union space. So that's really more of like, how can you put your assets to work as a community ambassador, but I'm sure the others have ways to help champion it.
I love that. I love all of that. A lot of actionable items right there. Caroline, we don't have much time left. And if I can get like 30 seconds from Caroline and 30 seconds from Rodney, that would be ideal. So Caroline, tell me real quick how people can, it's kind of echoing what Robert was just talking about, some other ways for people to get involved.
Yeah, so we do have a website at www.thesoarfund.org, where if you all have an organization that wants to partner with us or wants to get the word out in your local community, you can reach us there, and would love to partner with organizations that have, feel like they have roots in the small business community that this could be a good fit for. And then just word of mouth. If you all know a small business that needs access to low cost capital, send them to the website and they can fill out an application to be matched with a community lender.
Great stuff. Rodney?
And I'll say, if you have suddenly come into a small fortune because your great uncle's long held fortune has just come into your hands, we are always looking to bring in new funding partners on the technical assistance side. As said at the beginning, the technical assistance is provided free to the organizations, the small businesses. So that part is not part of the loan package. So if your goal in life is to see small businesses in disadvantaged areas in the United States succeed and grow, we believe we're a great investment for that. So As Caroline said, you can go to our website and take a look. But we want to expand this program and provide services to as many small businesses as we can. So.
This has been a really fascinating conversation. Rodney Ferguson, President and CEO, Winrock International, Senior Advisor at Concordia. Robert Meloche, Head of Programs at the Visa Foundation. Tonitrice Wicks, Senior Program Officer at Winrock International. And Caroline Yarborough, Syndications and Strategy Officer at Calvert Impact Capital. Guys, we got through it without anyone being muted. Minimal technical difficulty. I'm proud of us. Thanks to Concordia for hosting this. Everyone have a fantastic day.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.